Welcome to Terrible at Fishing with Michael Ruffino and Ken Sandusky. Well, let's get this show started with a little fishing report. It has been a strange week. One day, I am catching a whole lot of topwater bass, and then for 2 days later, none. Although, I did figure it out. So, the bass seem to understand that there's going to be an inversion happening pretty soon. So, next month, the lakes and water bodies are going to switch. The cold water is going to come to the top, warm water down to the bottom. In the meantime, we have some fishing to do. Even though I'm still getting some topwater hits, the bass are hitting at a little bit deeper. So go with a square bill crank. If you go with that, you'll be catching your bass and go big because the big guys are starting to eat heavily. So use big baits. Don't be afraid to throw a 7 or 8 inch bait out there and work that upper water column. The bass will be hitting it and you'll be catching some big boys. Please put them back so we can catch them again next year. As for the panfish, they're still hitting pretty good. Water's still warm, and the crappie and the panfish, the pumpkin seed sunfish, the perch, everything is still hitting. So go small and catch those fish. As for the trout are hitting pretty good over at Lake of the Woods. They are 30 to 40 feet deep, although over at Fish Lake, you're still catching a whole bunch of trout. That is a good trout fishing lake. Also, Willow Lake is hitting pretty good, as well as Lost Creek Lake. Diamond Lake is doing it on about a 2-foot leader. So please, get out there and start catching these fish, and go to my YouTube channel, Terrible at Fishing, and see what rigs that I'm using in order to catch those big ones. So, now that we've covered fishing, let's get on with the show. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. This is with Michael and Ken, and we're going to talk about a strange situation that happened to me last Wednesday. Now, some of you do keep track of me on my Facebook page. You probably know what I'm talking about. But this led to this week's show. So I like to get up bright and early before the sunrise, and I get on the road in the dark. And I'm driving along Highway 140. Now, there's a straightaway in between Rocky Point and the hill right before Lake of the Woods. And I got my brights on, it's dark and there ain't no other cars coming my way. And I see on the highway something. Now, I don't know what the something is because it's dark, but I'm going 60. I ain't saying the truth, but I'm going, and I swerve really hard into the shoulder, slide my truck, clip whatever it was in the middle of the road. Now, I'm thinking maybe it's somebody's bumper. That's what I'm thinking. It was a bumper. So I put on my emergency flashers and I do a U-turn because you can't leave whatever it is in the middle of a dark highway on the highway, or else somebody else is going to hit this and cause maybe some serious damage or injury or death. So I turn around and I park next to what I see is not a bumper. It is a 14-foot metal John boat. This thing is big and it's heavy. It's like 1,000-pound boat.
Wow.
And I get out and I'm flashing my high beams, warning any kind of oncoming traffic to stop. And I get out on the highway and I'm pushing this boat off of the highway and I'm basically spinning it. But I'm trying to meander it. And then these two guys with a truck and an empty trailer drive up. And I looked at them. I said, "Is this your boat?" And they go, "Yeah." And they had gone miles without noticing that they had lost their boat that slid off of their trailer. And that thing must have been, it had to have made a ruckus. This was a metal boat. It had to throw sparks on the highway. I clipped the corner of it. I crushed the corner of the boat, at which point I wish it was just, fiberglass, but it was metal. And so the guy was really nervous, and I noticed, he noticed that there was no winch on his trailer. It was his buddy's boat. So he borrowed his buddy's boat, which is an agreement they both have. He's got the motor and his buddy's got the boat, and they just use it whenever they want. So he picked it up in the dark in Medford. Now, don't tell me how he made it that far with that boat on that trailer that was never secured. Never. His buddy was working on the trailer, and he had removed the winch, and he was re-welding in some stuff. So, but he borrowed the boat without checking any secure lines that the boat should have. One, the winch, the secure chain, your transom straps.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things you must, I don't care if it's dark, you get your light out, you make sure everything is correct. I don't know how he made it from Medford almost to Rocky Point without losing that on the uphill side of the Cascades. But what bothered me too, besides a boat in the middle of a highway, which, what are the odds? What are the odds of you hitting a boat with your truck on a highway?
On your way fishing.
On my way, exactly. And I looked it up. There is no statistical probability of this. So I'm a firm believer that if it's not supposed to happen, I do it. And so I go, to all these stores in town here in Klamath to try to find me a new bumper because, I dented my bumper and broke my fog light. So I find this one store. I won't say the name of the store because it kind of annoyed me. Nice guy, but he goes, "Is that the boat that was on the highway by Lake of the Woods?" I go, "Yeah, how do you know?"
Oh, no.
He goes, "Oh, I passed it."
Oh, no.
I passed it, he said. He did not stop. He did not flag it in some way, which is what I did. And he did not try to move it. He's a strong guy. But even if you're a woman, this is, I don't care if you're disabled or whatever, you park on the side of the road with your flashers and try to warn people about the hazard. Don't just be glad you didn't hit it and go home. And that, I think, bothered me more than the guy who borrowed his buddy's boat and didn't check all the tie lines.
Agreed.
I don't know. I have this sense, to where, what if something did happen and I got injured? That guy, he just drove right by it and was glad he didn't hit it. So I would feel guilty if that happened, if I was the guy, and somebody got hurt because I didn't take care of it.
Yep.
I would feel there would be some serious guilt going on.
Yep, me too.
So,
can't drive by a rock in the road, much less a boat. Yep.
Exactly. I teach my kids, to look for things to do the right thing to, So if somebody's got their flashers on at the side of the road, stop and see if they need some help.
Yep.
And I do this all the time. But something that was blocking both lanes of the highway, and I almost flipped my truck, going onto the shoulder, but that's why I had to clip it because I was keeping my truck from flipping. I just don't understand why somebody wouldn't just stop and just turn on their flashers and wait for some help, and maybe 2 or 3 other cars can come by and push this thing off the highway.
Well, put your high beams on it as the least you could do. I mean, even if you're late for work, I can't imagine an employer who would hold you responsible for, doing the right thing like that. So
yeah, call it into the police, the highway patrol or state trooper, whoever does it, and 911 it, and they'll come out and they'll take care of it. But stay next to it, make sure that it's marked in some way. So I'm thinking, what a better topic for today's show than boat safety, because I hit a boat on a highway.
Hey, folks, strap your boats down. Okay, show's over.
Yes, strap them down And before you put them on your truck or your car or whatever, make sure that the winch strap is attached, the safety chain is attached, and there are two typically transom straps, on the back of the boat that are supposed to be there. Now, you've got a redundancy system of 4 straps on a trailer to make sure that boat does not leave the trailer. Now, I would also suggest putting a safety chain on your trailer because I don't want to hit a trailered boat next time I go fishing.
Well, it's not just boat safety, right? We're talking about trailer safety. So, everything you just said basically applies. I can't leave the driveway. And then I get down to the road before I turn on the highway. I got to do another walk around.
Yep.
With the fire background, we in information, they did one less spark fire information, one less spark campaign. And that was really largely about trailer chains dragging. So, there's those additional responsibilities like you were talking about, kind of civic duty that it goes beyond just your own safety.
Well, yeah. I mean, what you got to think, sort of like that golden rule, and, do unto others as you want them to do unto you or do for you. And if you were me and I wasn't paying attention to what was on the road, and I was distracted by whatever, music or whatever. I think those guys were distracted by music, and that's why they didn't hear the crash, the slide, the sparks, coming from behind them. But I could have hit that thing broadside, flipped my truck, or that thing would have flipped on me. I mean, I've survived a lot of stuff. I'm tired of surviving. I mean, I don't want to die, but I don't want to get into those situations. But those individuals that could have hit that. I kind of took my life into my own hands by going out on the highway and trying to push this thing off, because what if somebody would have hit me? I didn't think that. I was just thinking this can kill somebody, and I had to push it off the highway. And fortunately, the guys with the empty trailer showed up and was able to do it. So, I've been looking up a lot of boat stuff, and I know you and I have talked about, especially boat ramps. Yeah, especially boat ramps. And I don't trailer my boat. I mean, I have an inflatable pontoon boat that for 2 guys, and I just stick it in the back of my pickup truck, and I strap it down. I put a red flag on the back because it sticks out the back a bit. But I will walk around and I will pull on my boat. I will make sure all my straps are good and everything is tidy. So I don't drive down the road and find out my boat left my truck without my permission. And so I would suggest that everybody, whether it be a kayak, and I see kayaks all the time, just thrown in the back of trucks, and they're not strapped down. You hit a bump or something and the fulcrum isn't quite where it was, and it slides and it just flips out of your truck. You want to make sure that everything is tied down, strapped down. And I see this all the time. People they think that the fulcrum is just going to stay, in the back of the truck. And, it's just because you got 3 feet of the kayak sticking over your tailgate, it's not going to fall out. Now, personally, I would tell everybody, transport your kayaks flat. Do not put them tilted up on your tailgate because you're going to damage it. But, and just strap them down and put a flag on it, red washcloth or whatever on the back. That's what I did with my kayak, because it was 12.5 feet, same as my boat. And so I always transported it flat, put a flag on the back, and strapped it down through the handles onto my truck bed. Well, stay tuned for Ken and I to continue this wonderful discussion on how I nearly died by hitting a boat on the highway. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing, and let's get back to the show and hear us talk about boating safety. But I see this all the time. I've seen people with inflatables that were not deflated um, on their rooftops, folded in half, while they're flapping in the wind like a big Pac-Man looking at you.
So again, you're talking about something specific to boats and angling that applies across the board to responsible load hauling. I mean, you're not supposed to be hauling a load in the back of your truck that's unsecured. Right? It's not something that law enforcement, focuses on. Obviously, they're
Right.
just spread too thin. But if you're going to the dump or you're using those racks in general, it's your responsibility to other motorists to make sure that you're being safe in that regard. You should not be carrying a load in the back of your truck that isn't strapped down
I
unless it's just
agree.
too heavy to fly away by any chance whatsoever. Even then, in a rollover or something, it might be beneficial to have that thing strapped in well.
Well, yeah, imagine in the situation that I was in Wednesday. I had to go off road. My truck was ready to roll on me because it was a slanted shoulder on it.
Yeah.
And if I had something in the back of my truck, which I did, but it was strapped down. But let's say it wasn't strapped down and they were kayaks or something like that, they would have flown. Literally, they would have been flown out of the truck and spewed all over the place and
Now that's
caused
a
even more
missile.
damage.
That's a missile for any standards by.
Exactly. No, people. You just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if something's going to be in the middle of the road. I mean, the odds of a boat is rare. I looked it up, but it could have been a bumper. I thought it was a bumper.
Plan for the worst, hope for the best. Even running in the boat in the middle of the highway.
I know, and so, and I used to work at Lake of the Woods in the marina, and I have towed, and I have seen people run themselves over on the boat ramp. I have towed vehicles out of the lake with my truck, and people, and it's scary. It really is. I remember this older gentleman. He had a regular car, and then he was backing his trailer up into the water. He got out. He forgot to set his emergency brake. And somehow his car, the door was open, and it started rolling back. He tried to get back in, but he couldn't get back in. He fell, and the car ran over him. And it's just when people, even locally, I have seen a lot of vehicles in the lakes. I've seen them in Klamath Lakes. I've seen them in Lake of the Woods, obviously, since I worked there. I've seen whole motorhomes go into the lake. Wow. Yeah, I remember towing that one out with my truck, all four-wheel drive, and one of my straps, which are very strong, broke. It was just so much weight. And so there are, in this show, I just want people to be safe and understand etiquette at the boat ramp. People get upset at the boat ramp. And there's things you can do before, and there's a staging area, there's the boat ramp, and then there's an exit area, an area that you can go and just finish doing what you started to do, what you want to do.
Even if you don't have a boat, there are etiquettes that should be followed. Kids swimming off of a boat dock is one of the major ones.
Or even wading into the water on a boat ramp. People do that all the time at Lake of the Woods. And it's not allowed. It is against, it's dangerous for one thing. If they slipped, fell, hit their head, or swimming around that area, boats cannot see ahead in the water.
Yeah.
To them, it's invisible, and they'll be coming in. They might come in hot, and they just crack a skull. And
Not big on rules. It's more about common sense for me. And there's days when it's perfectly safe to swim at the boat launch, and there's days when you just shouldn't even dip a toe in there.
yep,
And so, if you are conscious and offering some deference to the use of that location, right? You just don't have the right of way to swim off
no,
of a boating dock. It doesn't matter what the rules are. That dock is for boats. That ramp is for boats. That's its primary use. And, for your own safety and just to be a good person, get out of the way while the boat wants to use it. If you want to come back, and I've been the perpetrator before where I'm fishing off of a dock and I've had boats run over my line on purpose, just because they want to fish that dock and they don't think I should be there. So that's kind of a different argument, but
right.
kind of basing the same thing where they felt privileged that was what that dock was for and didn't want me there. It's a little different than the whole safety discussion, but
Yeah, no, I've at Lake of the Woods, all the docks there are privately owned except for the ODFW ones at the boat ramp. Now, on ODFW, they don't say you can't fish from them. All right. But as a courtesy, boats have right of way. That's just the way it is. And you should not be using it as a diving platform. You should, it's shallow there too. So kids are just jumping off, and there are some serious rocks, and they can get hurt. And fishing from an ODFW dock, even though it's not specifically forbidden, it's not wise, because you're right. Some boaters get really upset. And I remember one time, my son and I was only out there for 15 minutes. It was before my shift, and I was disabled, and I threw a few lines out. This lady ran up to me and just started yelling at my son and I. I mean, cursing at us. And I was like, well, this is a public dock. But instead of insisting, I should have just left. But the Italian in me, I don't know. My son did the right thing. He didn't say a word. But even though you can do it, doesn't mean you should do it. And in hindsight, I could have handled that better. But you shouldn't be fishing from the ODFW docks because your line can get caught up in somebody's motor, and it's a pain in the rear to remove lines from your prop. So I have to remove the prop sometimes and just take it off. And that's kind of a pain. And it's because of that. It's not good.
I guess it's not what you should do or shouldn't do. It's that everybody out there, for me, should be looking out for each other. And
Right.
if I want to fish off a dock, I'm going to fish off a dock, and I'm going to try to limit what I choose to do, how that impacts negatively people around me.
Right.
And if someone is, you could. There's also this thing that boats have a little more freedom, and you got to have some affluence to gain that freedom. And some people
Yes.
don't have the resources, and so there's a lot of deference that needs to be paid by boaters to shore anglers, especially kids. And if they are breaking rules or etiquette, there's a way to teach them
Yes.
without, and that goes for adults too. It's just about the interaction and trying to not infringe on other people's enjoyment. I don't care if you have the right of way or not. If you're in a boat, you're a privileged individual, right? And you need to act like it. And that means if a little kid's doing something, or people who can't afford a boat are in your way, then you need to be polite to get what you need, because you have something that they don't. You
Yeah.
should realize that and not rub it in their face by saying that, hey, you're not supposed to be here. And that goes for a private dock. So it happens often at those lakes where people think they own the lake too. right?
That's true. That's
Yep.
true.
And so,
There's only one or two people Lake of the Woods that feel that way
but the boat
that I've run
safety,
across.
the boat safety stuff applies to those private docks, right? So not only
Sure
can
does.
I should be able to go up and fish them, but if you have done something to stop that, then you're affecting someone's safety as well, right? So
Yes.
whether that be a badly tied line or something like that, intentionally or not, you're putting other people at risk.
Yes. And I think I'm not sure if it was one of my first shows or whatever, but I talked about fishing etiquette and the right of way. And one, never insist on your right of way, even if you got it. Don't insist on it. So the bank fisherman has right of way. I mean, they basically they set up, they've got their chair, they got their tackle, they got everything, and they're casting out. They are given the right of way because you're in a boat and you can just move. Now, how much space should you give somebody? Now, typically etiquette is 100 feet. Give somebody 100 feet, radius so they can cast and just enjoy that area. And then there's kayakers. Kayakers would then, they would next be up to the right of way. And then motorboats, rowboats, motorboats, things like that would then work their way up the chain. Now, I was fishing, when was it? Yesterday? Yesterday. I was fishing yesterday. And this one guy, I'm fishing my spot, I'm anchored, and I'm casting, working the weed beds, and this guy's trolling. What does he do? He trolls right in front of me. Just right in front of me. Right across my lines. And so if I always ask when somebody's fishing, which way are you casting? Which area are you working? So I can go around you and not disturb your fishing hole.
Yep.
And I do that all the time for people. But people in boats and kayaks like to hug the shoreline. And as a fisherman, you're casting towards shore all the time. And so a group of kayakers just go right over my smallmouth bass or my largemouth bass. And largemouth bass aren't really too scary. They'll usually stick around. But but these guys, they come right in front of you. So when it comes to fishing etiquette, give people their radius. Ask them where they're casting. Observe how far they're casting and give them that radius. It's not hard.
More life lessons learned at riverside or lakeside, right? So applicable across the board. I don't know why we have to talk so much about it, but because it's really just about not making other people's day worse. Okay, it's pretty easy metric for me. I want to see them catch a fish. I don't want to get in the way of that. As a matter of fact, I'd rather fish alongside you or watch you for a little while, get as much enjoyment that way.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, if they need some pointers, I'm always there to help them. If they're fishing for trout in 8 feet of water and the water's 75 degrees, they ain't going to catch none. So it's just not going to happen. Not in a lake. And it's just too hot. Poor trout would die. But let's get back to boats, because at the boat ramp, this is where people can lose patience, right? They don't understand how to launch a boat. Well, that was a fun segment. Let's find out how to launch a boat in our next segment. So please stay tuned and listen to all those wonderful commercials that are paying the rent nowadays. So thank you for listening to Terrible at Fishing. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing, and let's get back to the show and hear us talk about boating safety. So right when you drive up to a lake, Lake of the Woods has 3 boat ramps. 2 of them are single boat ramps. Aspen and Sunset are basically just single ramps. And the main ramp can fit 3 boats side by side if somebody knows how to back up their boats. Otherwise, it's not that going to happen. It's 2 boats. So when a person, after they make sure their boat is secured and they trailer it, they get to the lake. So there's a staging area that typically that guys with boat trailers can go ahead and just park. And what are they supposed to do at that point?
Wait.
Wait. But one, you want to remove the transom straps.
Okay.
You want to remove those back straps. You want to make sure if your boat has a boat plug, a drain plug.
Yeah.
Make sure that you put it in the boat.
We've all done that.
Yes. You know how many boats I've seen start sinking right after they launch? A lot of them. So please make sure you put your boat plug in the, securely in your boat, so you don't launch it and it just starts filling with water. And then you can loosen your winch strap a foot or 2. This way it allows the boat to, when you go to release it from the boat in the water, you're not fighting the tension of the strap. So you can loosen it just a little bit and leaving the chain on there just in case. And then probably one of the things that I'm always doing service-wise on my truck, because I use my emergency brake all the time, is that I'm always having my emergency brake fixed, adjusted, because I will go on the ramp and sometimes I'll find my emergency brake in time will start to slide. And I have a stick shift, but I always leave it in gear too. So now you're ready to get in line after you do that. So if you want to put all your stuff in it, your rods, your coolers, that's all done at the staging area. That's not done on the boat ramp. So all that stuff is being done away from the lineup. So other people are backing their boats in. Just because you drove up to the lake before them doesn't mean you're in that line. Get all your stuff in there. And if somebody wants to get in the boat so they can back it off, if you're by yourself, that's not going to happen. But if you got a second person, they're going to get in the boat and they're going to be able to back it out off of the trailer. So now at that point, after you got everything in there, everything set, the dog is in there, your buddy's in there. Now you can get in the lineup to launch your boat. And this is where people do stupid things. They'll go ahead and back. Hopefully you're good at backing up your trailer. Hopefully. A lot of people aren't. They'll overcorrect. But anyway, I always find that if you grab the bottom of your steering wheel and left is left, right is right at that point. If you go to the top, it's opposite. But if you grab the bottom, it's a little easier at understanding trailering and backing up, because you're not going to jackknife it. And a nice thing about grabbing the bottom, you're not going to overcorrect like you would on top. You would overcorrect.
Yep.
So grab the bottom of the steering wheel and get a good line on something, usually the dock, but it could be the other side of the ramp or whatever, and keep that in your rear view mirror and go down, and don't submerge your trailer. Please do not submerge your trailer. you basically, depending on your boat, you're going to get the wheels 2/3 wet, but you're not going to submerge your trailer. You just want that boat to slightly lift off or just on the verge of lifting off your trailer, because you could get, once you put the motor in, then and don't forget, if you have a keel, a transom guard, you remove that too. So usually you have a what do you call it? One of those rods that holds the engine up when you're
Yep.
transporting. So remove that. You're never going to put the trim down then, and back it up. Put the motor down so it's in the water and it can cool. Start it up, and then release your strap and your chain and let them pull it off the trailer. But make sure you put you stop your vehicle is in gear, and or park, and then your emergency brake. Really, 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 really important. Because if you're by yourself and you try to do this and you did not secure your vehicle's stationary momentum, and I'm at the lake, I'll pull your truck out of the lake with my truck. And I've done that a lot. And it's scary. I mean, it's basically a wash for their car. I mean, literally, but you know what I mean.
I learned something. It doesn't always fit. It's good to keep in mind. I have a tendency to undo the winch hook and tie off to my tailgate so I can pull out from under, and then without losing the boat. And because I'm always launching by myself,
Yeah.
or with kids, and it can't, so that means that I'm unhooking the winch before I back up. And I've had one time, there's a lake outside of Lookout down here in Modoc County where you have to back down a 4x4 2-track in order to get your boat in there. But when it's the biggest bass in the county, and so I've done that before, and I learned the first time, and I got lucky to be able to get it back on the trailer halfway down that hill. But I have to remind myself every time now to leave that hook on there, because my habit is to unhook it and then back in, so the momentum can push it off and I can drive out from under.
Well, some of these lakes have some really steep areas, especially when they're low. So, you go to Lost Creek Lake or something like that. That is just, it's just, you're just driving down at an incline. And, or even Shasta has got some pretty tough, boat ramps that are in huge, inclines. And you gotta make sure that you don't lose your car, or your truck or whatever you got. And make sure you got good tires. Do not go to a boat ramp with bald tires, and you got no grip. And so people, I don't know how many. I have to I look at my tires, do the penny thing or nickel thing or whatever, make sure you got good tread, and make sure that your brakes are serviced on a regular basis. I do it annually. My emergency brakes are serviced annually, even though my regular brakes are fine. But I use my emergency. But every time my truck is stopped, which is in my parking lot, in my driveway right now, emergency brakes are on. I don't know why I do it. It's just what I do with a stick. I leave it in gear too. So I was like, I don't know.
Well, we really are a different kind of fishermen, because we're at the places I want to go. You can't get there without good tires. And if you park in a lot of spots without hitting your e-brake, you're having it in gear is not going to help. It's going to go anyway.
Yeah,
So
I use my e-brake all the time.
The best fishing holes down here, F and C, Duncan, out Big Sage Reservoir, or up in the Warners where I was this weekend. If you're not doing that kind of stuff, then you're going to have trouble. You're going to get a flat tire. You're not going to make it where you want to go. And that goes for boat launches too. These boat, if you have to wait in line, you're in the wrong fishing hole, in my opinion. But you go to F and you got dirt. You got a gravel hill, and I talked about the 2-track at over by Lookout. So these boat launches is where we go. It's just a incline into the water, usually rocky. Sometimes you got to get out and clean it out before you can even back up. At Duncan, there's always big old rocks in the way for some reason.
Yep. Yeah, well, you know why I fish Lake of the Woods as much as I do because of health issues. But the also, I mean, it doesn't just go with boats too. Kayakers are just as bad nowadays because they'll go ahead. You know, they're fishing kayaks. They have crates, you know, that they're putting on their kayaks. They've got all their fishing gear. Some of them have trolling motors, and so what they'll do is they'll back up and they'll put their kayak and then start putting everything on their kayak, taking up a boat launch area. And I'm kind of to blame at this too because of my boat. I don't trailer my boat, so I can't put. I put my battery and my motor on after I get it out of the back of the truck, and so typically it takes me 10 minutes to launch my boat. But I usually put myself in an area away from all the other boats, so they at least two other boats can launch their boats simultaneously while I'm sort of pushed myself out of the way. But some kayakers don't do that. They'll launch right in the middle of the ramp, and they'll start fitting their kayak because they don't do that on their car, and it takes a while. They got to be aware that that's a boat ramp too, and they need to push themselves out of the way or move it around the dock and fit it on the other side of the dock once they get it into the water. So, you know, that it's not just boats. People will start to get really upset, especially if they're wanting to get on the lake first thing, or they're tired and they want to get off the lake, and then they start getting upset. So
Think things have really changed. It wasn't long ago when the people at those ramps, they all had experience and they've been running boats for a while, and the advent of more kayak use and just availability, more people are engaged now, and you know a lot of them aren't even fishing, and so that etiquette was never learned, or there's some kind of other issues at play, maybe society wide, you know. And so it it's a different world now where you're dealing
yeah,
with a lot of greenhorns out there.
it is. And we talked about that ADA dock. One of the things that they're going to have on the ADA fishing dock is a kayak launch area in order to keep it separate from the boat launch area, which is going to be really nice if they can get it going. But a lot of people are on the water nowadays that they have no clue. I had last week, I think it was the sheriff, you know, he and I are friends, and I pretty much know all the sheriffs and on the water. And they came up, we were talking, and he's making sure everybody's got PFDs, you know, life vests, and doing his thing. And so he goes over to this boat where this guy was rowing, and he's trolling while he's rowing with his girlfriend on his boat. And they didn't even have PFDs, let alone waterways permits. Every vehicle, every boat, every kayak 10 feet or bigger has to have a waterways permit. If they don't, they cannot be on the water.
An invasive species inspection. That's a sore topic when they shut down the inspection station in at Midland, and where you got to go to Ashland now. They talked about opening it back up, but I can't. I live in Modoc County. I was born and raised in Klamath Falls, and I cannot fish in my boat in my own home waters because there's nobody to look at. And I got an inspection in California, right?
Yeah, California is very strict on it.
Well, I got a muscle sticker, so and that the waterways permit is a kind of a backwards ways of saying it. It's actually an invasive species tag.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned for the exciting last segment of boat safety. Yes, I'm excited, and if you stay tuned, you will be too. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing, and let's get back to the show and hear us talk about boating safety. Yeah,
But you're also supposed to have a license in Oregon too, right? In California now as well.
Well, you need a license for certain size boats on up and motorized, but and I have one because I worked at the marina. But and it's a really good license. I mean, it took me 6 hours to do that test, but
I have
most
mine.
of it was personal watercraft. Half of it was like on, sea-doos and those things,
Yeah.
and the safety. Those guys have zero right of way, by the way, zero. They are at the end of anything. They
Huh.
have to make way for everybody.
Somebody should tell them that.
Yeah, they don't know that, but by law, they have zero
Is that
right
right?
of way, none.
What about my float tube? What right away I got my float tube?
Float. Well, you're like a kayaker, but
Is that right?
you don't need a waterways permit with float tube. That's
Yep.
another nice thing. I
And
mean,
you can have a beer in there too.
well, yeah, it's a tube. I wouldn't show that to the sheriff though.
No, sir. No, sir. But it's not just PFDs either, right? So you're supposed to have a whistle and a fire
Whistle.
extinguisher. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, a fire extinguisher if you've got a gas engine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I just use an electric trolling motor on my boat. But my son bought me the Leatherman that's called the Signal, which is like an awesome. They're probably their best Leatherman, and it's called the Signal because it does two things. It's got a whistle built into it, which is great, and it's got a flint, one of those magnesium flints. So I mean, I love that thing. So it's always on my belt. So even if I'm in the water, I still got my whistle. And now I have, when I'm ice fishing, I definitely have my whistle because I've fallen through the ice a couple times, and you just got to start yelling, because if you don't have your ice picks and you can't get yourself up out of the water, someone's got to come and get you. So that's another. We'll get into ice fishing later in the year.
I'm looking forward to that one.
It's fun. You and I got to go. Also, when you're taking your boat out of the water, again, do what we just talked about, but backwards. Just get your boat loaded, take it to an area, and start taking all the stuff off of it and cleaning it up. And when you definitely remove your boat plug, because you talked about invasive species. A lot of that is microbial, and that can get into your boat through that hull, and so you have to drain it completely in order to not cross-contaminate from one water body to the next water body. So you have to remove that water plug and drain your boat at that water body, not anywhere else. So whatever you've taken away, you're leaving behind.
It's not even just the big ticket invasive species, quagga, zebra mussel, that kind of thing. Right. An example, I brought up F. I hope there's not a lot of listeners. F Reservoir. I live real close by it down here. It's pretty popular even with folks from Klamath. But about 5 years ago, a new moss got introduced. There's a lot of aquatic growth in there, but it was plants, it was seaweed. But all of a sudden this muck started growing in there, and the fishing went to pot for about 3 years, and it took a while for it to regain that homeostasis and restabilize, like we talked about with smallmouth and Lake of the Woods. But in this case too, now it's all over everything. It's just, you can't swim in the lake anymore like you could, and that definitely came out of somebody's bilge water. It's not an invasive species, probably, who knows, but it's not on their list. It's not something they're trying to stop, but somebody moved that from one body to the other and really hurt the fishing at F for a few years.
Well, this was the very first year my buddies and I have ever seen blue-green algae at Lake of the Woods. How'd that get there? I mean, people don't realize what they're doing by not flushing their boats, from that body of water, and they take it to now. One thing about California that is good about California, and it was always a bother for me, but I went from lake to lake to lake, and at every entrance of all the lakes that I went to in Southern Cal, that they would inspect your boat at the gate every single time. Now they would tag your boat. If I'm a regular at a lake, like if I like Lake of the Woods, they would just at the exit when I left, they would put a tag on my boat, and that way I wouldn't have to go through an inspection every single time at that lake. But if the tag was missing, they would inspect it. That means I went to another lake. So California is, I mean, at least the lakes I've been to, they're really the ones that are tended to. They're very strict on cross contamination.
That's not going to fly in the state of Jefferson. we don't.
No?
This is not Southern California. But
yeah, well,
you know, again, it's not about rules for me. It's about treating your fellow human beings with respect and trying not to let your existence have a negative impact on other people's. And the libertarian way, right? You're free to. Your freedom does not extend towards taking away my freedom and being careless, whether it be losing a boat on the highway or messing up a lake by introducing a new species of any sort.
right.
You know, and that starts to get into some of the bucket biologist type discussions too, which is maybe a good topic for another show.
Well, people don't. When I thought about, I was thinking, you know, clams and fish and stuff like cross contamination. You don't think about the microbials of plant life that are easily introduced from one body of water to the next body of water. And there are some plants that are at Lake of the Woods that are not indigenous, that are growing like crazy at that lake. And, you know, those were brought in from a boat, probably, that didn't do a thorough job leaving one body before coming to another. And I really think you're right. I mean, you know, at Midland, there was a boat inspection area. Sometimes I see it at Moore Park. The sheriffs will set up a boat inspection area, but it's voluntary. Nobody drops by and say, hey, why don't you look at my boat? You know, but if anybody coming out of Klamath should definitely hose. I mean, that's a terrible lake this time of year. That blue-green algae is just prolific in Lake of the Woods right now. And that just clings to your hull. That's inside your boat. You got to wash that thing so thoroughly. And I'm not just talking about boats. I'm talking about kayaks or inflatables or whatever you got. You cannot bring that to any other body of water.
Doesn't matter if it dries out either, because it can rehydrate, come back to life really indefinitely after drying out on your hull. And it's really difficult to get off after you've let it dry too. So best thing to do is right away.
Hose it down.
The blue-green algae is a lost cause around here, but you know, that's a lot of that plant life and cyanobacteria can survive desiccation. You know, it just because it's dry doesn't mean it's dead.
No. And a lot of people, they don't think about it. And they might not even realize they're doing it until they listen to the show or something else. And they see these boat inspection areas and they're wondering, what are they doing? Yeah, they're looking for safety features, of course, but they're also making sure that you're not cross-contaminating. And, you know, all the lakes I went to were public lakes in Southern Cal. They were very, 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 very strict. If you had one drop of water on your boat and it wasn't tagged for that body of water already, they would not let you on the lake. They wouldn't let you on the lake, not with that boat. So they're very strict, almost, you know, Nazi-esque.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. And why I live in Modoc County.
It felt like it, but that's the way they were. And I think they went over the top a lot of times, but at the same time, it was a lesson learned, you know, for me. I just stayed at one lake.
those rules and programs are results of people misbehaving. of
Exactly.
people not taking their responsibility to their fellow citizenry seriously. And basically, every rule we have is a one bad apple scenario that just, over time serves to limit resource, opportunities, fishing and hunting and hiking and biking, whatever you want to talk about. Just over time, it's a death by 1,000 cuts because one person can't be trusted. We all got to be treated like we can't be trusted. So, even if you're not doing something directly to endanger, your fellow anglers or other user group members, if you're not behaving yourself, you're taking away opportunity over the long haul.
Yes.
So everybody's taking, even if you buy a kayak and you get out on the water, just to paddle around, you're taking on a responsibility that has implications beyond just your kayak. And if you're not ready to take those responsibilities seriously, in my opinion, you don't belong on the water. You're the reason we have all these rules.
Yep.
Right. And that goes for leaving your trash behind or taking
Yes.
too many fish. We wouldn't have all these rules if people just followed the golden rule. But instead, we all got to jump through all these hoops, and it's only going to get worse unless we're taking care of each other.
Well, stupid laws are made because of stupid people. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, you wonder why a certain law is made, and and certain lakes in California are over the top at policing this. It's because of stupid people or ignorant people. It's one of the two. Either a person just doesn't care, or a person just doesn't know. And it just is one of those things that, you just want people to do the right thing. The last thing we want is the Upper Klamath Lake, all the other lakes looking like Upper Klamath, because this time of year it is unhelpful for you to even touch the southern part of the, from Howard's Bay south. It's unhelpful for a human being to touch it. So what do you want Lake of the Woods to look like that, Diamond Lake to look like that, Lost Creek Lake, Willow Lake, and all these other lakes that are beautiful? I mean, last thing we want is to have them look like Upper Klamath. So one of my pet peeves is the no wake zone. What does no wake mean? And people don't know. I don't think they know, or they don't care. It's one of the two. But no wake means no wake or idle. Just put your boat in idle and get beyond those pylons. Then gun it if you want. The marina is all marinas are no wakes for very important reasons, because boats can get damaged with wakes, seriously damaged, or somebody could get seriously hurt because of wakes. If they're just trying to get on their boat and a wake comes in and throws them in, and they get in between the boat and the dock, they can get crushed. I mean, it wasn't just 2 years ago, and that's weird, but so many bad things have happened to me on water. But I was thrown off a boat, and I was thrown into the dock, and it hit the across my chest, and it cracked my sternum. I know. Those things happen. I've broken a lot of bones, but I've never broken a sternum until that day. I blame the person driving the boat. And it's just coming in too hot. But that is one of those things that it hurt. They cannot fix that. You literally have to just wait. And at my age, I had to wait a long time, and I still have this bone that sticks out. So we want to thank you guys, and we will don't forget to go to my YouTube channel and see me fish, catch, or not. I am terrible at fishing, so and if you see me catch something, keep it to yourselves, because I have a reputation to uphold.